Chapter 6. Shame. Shame, the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Sound familiar? That definition comes from shame researcher Brené Brown. Shame makes it difficult to be our authentic selves because we believe that our authentic selves are flawed. The assumption is that if we show our flawed selves, we'll never be accepted. That hits right in the psyche, down in the place that's all about survival. Shame keeps us at not enough. The thing is, shame is just a belief. It's not reality. It's just a belief about reality. We need to play a little mental gymnastics with shame to disentangle some thinking. Shame is the belief that we are flawed, damaged, broken, not good enough, and therefore unworthy of love, happiness, connection, and belonging. Shame makes everything personal. It's in the I am that starts the sentence, I am not enough. It's not that we've done something stupid or that our performance has been poor or that we've made some bad decisions. It's that we define ourselves as the result of these. Instead of I did something stupid, shame says, I am stupid. Instead of I did something bad, shame says, I am bad. Instead of my body is overweight, untoned, blemished, ugly, etc., shame says, I am overweight, untoned, blemished, ugly, etc. Instead of I don't earn enough money to give my family a comfortable life, shame says, I'm not good enough, confident, intelligent enough to earn money to give to my family a comfortable life. Instead of I have failed, shame says, I am a failure. The thing is, we are not these things. They are simply circumstances and conditions going on in our life. That's it. There's a word of difference separating I did, I have, and I was from I am. Make this simple distinction and you can start to build some resilience to shame. I refer to this as extracting the I am. Yes, you might have done the occasional stupid thing. Who hasn't? But that doesn't mean that you are stupid. Yes, you might feel your body is overweight or blemished, especially when you compare yourself to images in the media. But that doesn't mean that there is something fundamentally wrong with you. It's just how your body feels to you right now in relation to the comparisons that you've made. Okay, it might be true that you've made a few unfortunate financial decisions. Who hasn't? Or failed to act at times when you could have acted to improve your life. But that doesn't make you a failure. It just means that those are the ways in which you've behaved at those times. We often confuse our behavior with our identity, and the result is shame, which makes it hard to feel worthy. It's easy to think that we're a bad person for behaving in a certain way, but we are not our behavior. We've merely exhibited certain behavior, and there may be many reasons for it. Maybe we've experienced hurt or pain in our life. Maybe this is all we know. Maybe we never learned a different way of interacting with people in the world. Making the distinction between identity and behavior allows us to accept ourselves while still changing how we are showing up in the world. Self-love gym. Extracting the I am. Write down a list of what you feel ashamed of. The examples above might give you some ideas, or it might give you something more personal or private to you. Now rewrite each item on your list in the following 5-part form. It's not that I am, insert. 2. The truth is that, insert. 3. That doesn't mean that I am, insert. 4. In fact, insert. 5. I am, insert. For point 4 and 5, insert a positive or an opposite. Here are a few examples based on workshop responses to help get you started. 1. It's not that I am stupid. 2. The truth is that I've just done a few things some people might call stupid. 3. That doesn't mean that I'm fundamentally stupid. 4. In fact, I've also made some intelligent choices in my life. 5. I am intelligent. Alternatively, 1. It's not that I am bad with money. 2. The truth is that I've just made a few decisions that turned out not to work as well as I'd hoped. 3. That doesn't mean I can't manage money. 4. In fact, I've made some very good financial decisions in my life, even if they were small ones. 5. The truth is, I am good with money. Notice that this person preferred to write "the truth is" in part 5. It just felt more like the kind of style that he'd use. Read over your statements every day until you feel that the truth has lodged into your mind. Add new shamers to your list as they arise and work through them in the same way. 4 steps to shame resilience. We can also use a little trick of neuroscience to become resilient to shame. The feeling of shame activates the fight or flight response in the brain. It's all about self-preservation. Resources then flow towards the stress areas of the brain. While that's happening, it can be difficult to be clear in our mind, to get some perspective, to be honest with others about what we're thinking or feeling. We might not even be able to be honest with ourselves. The trick is to understand that this is happening. Once we know, we can gently coax our brain into behaving in a different way instead. So, with this in mind, here are the 4 steps to shame resilience. Step 1. Diffuse stress with insight. For years, my mum suffered panic attacks. She told me that if it wasn't so much the actual panic attack that she was afraid of, it was the fear of it coming on, especially if she was in a public place, and it was the fear that often brought on the attack. She once said that if she thought that everyone else in the shopping centre got panic attacks, she probably wouldn't get them as much. She would relax knowing that it was okay if one happened. In other words, the ability not to have a panic attack was in a thought. Shame is similar in a way. Trying to resist shame can bring it on. Shame makes us feel inadequate. It seems very personal, but if we know that everyone else feels exactly the same way, it weakens the shame. That's the insight. Then the fight or flight response isn't activated in the brain. We relax a little bit. Shame is natural. In fact, it's one of the most natural things about being a human. Everybody feels it. Everybody. It's just that most people are afraid to admit it. They're afraid that they won't be accepted. Step 2. Extract the I am. This is the exercise in reasoning your way around shame that you learned a few moments ago. It's also an exercise in self-compassion, which we'll look at later. As you stop defining yourself by your actions and appearance, you start understanding yourself better. Self-compassion is a natural result. A key area of the brain for empathy and compassion is called the insula. It's halfway between the survival areas, which are active during stress and shame, and the prefrontal cortex, which is the area that controls concentration and helps us focus on thriving. Extracting the I am, which fosters empathy and compassion, helps us to move from survive to thrive. Step 3. Dance the shame away. This step can actually be quite a lot of fun. It's simply dancing the shame away. I use a victory dance strategy for a lot of things, and one of them is shame. It also helps shunt resources and energy away from the fight or flight survival areas of the brain and into empathy and higher order thinking areas like the prefrontal cortex. You can use this strategy in 2 ways. 1. Once you've finished the extract the I am exercise, you can burst into a little dance, a celebratory dance or a victory dance. Make it light-hearted and positive. Doing this helps attach a positive feeling to your new insights, shifting brain resources all the way to the prefrontal cortex. 2. When you're feeling ashamed about something and you don't feel mentally present enough to diffuse stress with insight or extract the I am, just burst into a silly dance, and it really does have to be a silly dance. Keep it up until you either laugh or smile broadly. Believe me, if your dance is silly enough, that it won't take long. And let me pass on a little piece of logistical advice to go along with it. Make sure that you're alone. Lock the door and close the curtains. In my book, How You Can Heal Your Body, I told the story of being caught in a full-on victory dance. It was very embarrassing, but funnily enough, victory dancing actually got me over the shame. I suppose you want to hear about it now. Well, I used to walk the same route to my office, whichever coffee shop I set my laptop in, every morning, leaving my house around 6:45 a.m. Around 5 minutes later, I'd reached 2 connecting underpasses under a road junction. It was a safe bet that I could do a wee dance there. I rarely met anyone at that time in the morning, and I'd usually only dance for a few seconds anyway. But on one particular morning, I lost myself in the moves and danced the entire length of the 2 underpasses. I was so into it I didn't even see what was ahead. And I had my eyes closed. As I opened my eyes at the end of the second underpass, I was met by the uncomprehending stare of a crowd of construction workers who were standing there in a state of complete bewilderment. As I mentioned earlier, at moments of high embarrassment or shame, a large part of our brain shifts resources to fight or flight. Intelligent thinking shuts down. You may have noticed that at moments like these you tend to say something or do something stupid. I was no different. The only idea I could conjure up was to pretend that my phone was ringing. Only I had no phone in my hand, so I answered my fingers and began to talk loudly to a pretend person. Unsurprisingly, this only added to the construction workers' assumption that I was crazy. I can't blame them, bearing in mind they'd also just watched me dancing myself. However, as you know, victory dancing also got me over the shame. I recalled the thoughts and feelings of shame by replaying the scenario in my mind, and once I was cringing with embarrassment, I burst into my victory dance. I only had to do this about 10 times consecutively to actually find the whole thing amusing. The power of victory dancing helped me swiftly to turn the shame into a smile. So devise your own victory dance and practice it. Do it 10 times in a row, either at the moment of shame or afterwards in the privacy of your own home. By the time you reach the 4th or 5th time, you'll have a much harder time focusing on the thoughts and feelings of shame. This is because your brain will already be learning to send resources away from the stress areas and towards the positive areas. Keep it up for at least the 10 anyway. Repetition is key when you're rewiring brain networks, as you know. In some ways, it's like speeded up psychotherapy. One of the ways psychotherapy works at a neurological level is that we process a memory from a more positive, often adult perspective. Although it's talk therapy, part of its power is that through talking, our brain networks stop connecting the event to stress and negative emotion and rewire it to continue a more positive set of insights and emotions, essentially moving resources from stress areas to the prefrontal cortex. Step 4. Reach out. It's okay to admit that we feel ashamed or embarrassed. Everyone feels that way sometimes. Reaching out to others can bring us some closure and can also give others a chance to be compassionate and perhaps to be honest with us too. This is where some magic can happen. In the space of telling someone else how we feel or how we can be feeling, whether it's a loved one, friend, or even a support group, we begin to feel connected, and through connection, we come to know that we are enough. So here's a summary of the 4 steps to shame resilience. 1. Diffuse the stress with insight. 2. Extract the I am. 3. Dance the shame away. And 4. Reach out. One of the many things Oscar has taught me is to take myself much less seriously. This is because he's done quite a few stupid things. He's fallen down holes, somersaulted when trying to pick up a tennis ball while running at full speed, ran out in front of cars, jumped up on a park attendant and tried to grab his stick, spotted a bird and dragged me headfirst right through a large group of extremely prickly bushes, much to the amusement of onlookers, and many, many other daft things. At puppy training classes, the trainer, a former Crufts Dog Show obedience winner, started to call him Marley, after the book and the film Marley and Me, about another crazy yellow Labrador. Had Oscar been a human, he'd have gone over some of these antics in his mind again and again. Well, after the event had passed, gradually moving towards feeling embarrassment and shame, he'd think, I can't believe I did that, and people saw me. Oh, the shame of it. But Oscar doesn't feel shame. He wakes up every morning with the biggest grin on his face, tail wagging furiously when he sees me or Elizabeth. The previous day is behind him. The new day has just begun, and it's about to be as good as he looks around. And it's about to be a good one as he looks around for the toys to play with or rip apart, or perhaps contemplates the next piece of mischief that he can get up to. We need to be more like Oscar. I don't mean that we should run out into the roads and launch ourselves onto park attendants, of course, but we need to get out of the way of our own life. So much of the pain that we feel is down to our interpretations of events and our perception of ourselves and what we imagine people think of us. We attach our identity and self-worth to events, and then if they don't work out in that way that we want, we judge ourselves. I am so... whatever it is. Oscar has taught me to lighten up. Yes, I can do seemingly stupid things, but can't we all? And I don't do them all the time. It doesn't mean I'm stupid, it means I'm normal. To Oscar, seemingly embarrassing or painful moments are small. To humans, they're huge. And herein lies another powerful way to reduce the pain of shame. Here's what to do. As you know, your brain doesn't distinguish between real and imaginary. So, think of an event that was embarrassing for you. Now shrink it down. Seriously, imagine it getting smaller. You can even use your hands to shrink it down. Imagine the scene shrinking smaller and until it's insignificantly small. Shrink the sound down as well until it's no more than a faint squeak. Your brain interprets this as the event becoming less significant. Significant events are large in our minds. They feel real and we can imagine them in a great deal, usually in rich colour and sound. Less significant events are harder to recall in detail. The bigger and richer an event is in your mind, the bigger its meaning is to you. So, shrink those shameful events down. You're not ignoring them. You're not pretending they didn't happen. You're just teaching your brain that they mean less to you. You might have to do this several times for the event for it to stick. But once you do, the event will have much less of an emotional impact on you. Shame sometimes grows out of perfectionism. Perfectionism has been defined as the tendency to set excessively high standards, to rigidly adhere to these standards, and to engage in overly critical self-evaluations. Taken to unhealthy extremes, it's a black and white, win or lose, all or nothing mentality. That's a recipe for unhappiness, low self-esteem, and depression. Don't get me wrong, perfectionism can be healthy. Some perfectionists merely strive for excellence, but its perfectionism stems from the belief, if I'm not perfect, I won't be accepted. Every attempt to be perfect only makes the statement, I'll be enough when, and each time we define when, we push enough further away. Enough becomes a carrot on a stick. Perfectionists are hypersensitive about other people's opinions, so they often hold back from showing their creations to the world until they are perfect. It needs to be a little bit better before I can show it to a common mantra. What they're really saying is, I need to be a little bit better before I can show myself. They hold back because they think others will be critical about them as they are of themselves. The assumption is that everyone else will see the same inadequacies, failures, bumps, and wobbly bits that they see in themselves. This prevents them from being seen. It prevents them from expanding. It ensures that they are less connected with the world. They shrink back from the world, and their sense of self-worth shrinks with them. Many readers of this book will not be perfectionists, but if this does describe you, write down the following affirmation. I am not my accomplishments and creations. Regardless of whether I win or lose, succeed or fail, the truth always remains that I am enough. You may be surprised by how useful affirmations can be. This is because they help to focus your intention. As you move forward with your self-love project, you will find unhealthy perfectionism disappears. Healthy perfectionism might remain as you might be inspired to strive for excellence. And you might find that your environment, your products, your creations become more beautiful than you ever imagined possible because you're operating from a different space. Why not try it? My friend Margaret often tells a story of watching me and a group of friends being presented with a peace flame for the work that we were doing with the charity that we'd set up, Spirit Aid Foundation. She decided then that she had to meet me. Seemingly by chance, we found ourselves partnered together a few months later on a meditation retreat in India. As the only two representatives from Scotland, we became instant friends. One of the many things I've learned from Margaret is the power of interacting with people. Margaret talks to everyone, and it doesn't matter if they don't even speak the same language. She'll find some way of communicating. After that trip, we ran several workshops together. Margaret had trained as a laughter therapist with a man who came to be her friend, Dr. Patch Adams, of the movie of the same name, whose character was played by the late Robin Williams. So we'd travel to events together, and she would dress as a clown for the whole trip. She attracted some looks, I can tell you. One time we were doing a workshop with a large insurance company. We entered the lift to go to the director's floor. It was occupied by two men in grey suits. They both immediately stared at the floor, clearly uncomfortable, probably due to the fact that Margaret was dressed in clown attire. I became uncomfortable too, when Margaret began interacting with them. They clearly didn't want to interact at all. The lift floor was much more interesting to them. Margaret was pushing them right out of their comfort zones. "What's so nice about the floor?" she asked. "Why don't people talk to each other in lifts? Let's talk. Tell me about yourselves." She spoke in a playful yet kind way. I felt quite embarrassed. Her words were as much for me as they were for the grey men. But by the time we reached our floor, the men had completely loosened up. One of them was actually loosening his tie as he stepped out, his face flushed. They were both smiling as they left the lift. Job done, as far as Margaret was concerned. I could tell that they'd enjoyed the trip in the lift. It had been unexpected, but damn, it had been a breath of fresh air. It had been a lesson for me too. If it hadn't been for Margaret, I would have gone up those 30 or so floors, also staring at the ground. And why? I would have been self-conscious, embarrassed, worried that I wouldn't know what to say, thinking people wouldn't want to interact, assuming people would want me to mind my own business, feeling vulnerable, feeling that I'd run out of conversation, feeling shame. I could go on. Do you recognize any of those feelings? Even though the opportunities to connect continually present themselves to us, we hold back, thinking that if we are our authentic selves, we won't be accepted. Yet connection is what we all biologically crave. What's happening? It can be presented in the form of an equation. Hold back bits of myself equals I'll get connections, which equals I will know I am enough. The reality is, hold back bits of myself equals true connection is not possible equals I reinforce that I am not enough. So herein lies the simple solution. It really is simple. Here it is. Go out and connect with people, and connect as yourself. Margaret taught me to interact with people on purpose, and it's made a real difference in my life. If ever I feel alone, I don't need to stay feeling alone. I can go out and connect with people. I've experienced depression a few times in my life. Connection brought me out of it. It brings you to life when you do it. It brings others to life too. So don't wait for connections to happen to you. Talk to people, interact with people in shops, supermarkets, on the street. Talk to your neighbours. Talk to your postman. Meet people. Join a group or a club. Volunteer for a charity. Take a class at college. Learn to dance. Learn a language. Make it your mission to connect with people. Set it as your intention and go out and do it. And do it as yourself, your real self. If you do, you'll start to feel connected. And because connection is connected, so to speak, with a state of being enough, you will also know that you are enough. In summary, everyone feels shame. It's a normal human emotion. There's little use trying to resist it, just as there's little use trying to resist occasionally feeling unhappy. But we can learn to become resilient to shame, just as we can learn to move through unhappiness. We learn shame resilience by first understanding that we're not alone in feeling shame. Part of the pain of shame is thinking that it's personal. The second step is learning to extract the I am, to separate our identity from our actions. For instance, we can rephrase I am stupid into I did something stupid. This simple turnaround gives birth to hope because we move away from the feeling that we're fundamentally flawed and towards identifying behaviour that we can change. The third step uses a little trick of neuroscience to shunt brain resources in moments of shame towards areas that are associated with positive emotions. In other words, dance. The fourth step of shame resilience is to reach out and connect with people while being honest and authentic. This gives connection and self-love a real chance to grow.